And now, the H2G Podcast presents The Wire.
Okay, boys, let's start with The Wire. We've been wanting to do this for a while. For all of you out here who've been big sports fans, we just thought it'd be better to just do it in a format that's more direct about sports. So the first thing I want to talk about, guys, is topical right now, NBA Finals. Lakers, Heat. We've had a lot of things going on, and just so you guys understand, we're pre-recorded. We're a couple days behind. So by the time you hear this series, which it already is over, let's be honest, but the series is probably going to be over at this point. I'm just going to start off real quick. I don't want to talk about necessarily this series. It was very unfortunate. It reminds me of 2015 when Kyrie Irving's knee just kind of exploded. And we didn't really get what I would consider a fair finals. I don't think the Heat really had a chance anyway, but when you start losing large pieces and they're out, I mean, against a team that's big in this modern era, it's just not fair. So realistically, I think you already know where I'm going. Lakers by a landslide. I think it's been pretty consistent. LeBron's focused and he's doing his typical 39-9 stat line. And, you know, what else is there to say about Anthony Davis? He's a unibrow, he's massive, and he's arguably one of the best big men in the game, if not the best big man. I do think we saw something with the Joker. So, I mean, but outside of that, you got Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis is a beast. And honestly, he's a three-point shooting prowess machine as well. It's been a series. I really respect the Heat because one of the stat lines that was so interesting is you had different team members leading their team in scoring every single game. And I thought that was really cool how broad, and it reminded me pseudo-ish of the Warriors pre-KD, where they just had a lot of weapons. But it doesn't matter what weapons you run into if you're too small. And I think that's what's made the Lakers had an opportunity, not just with the Heat, but with the Nuggets as well. They have three guys that are over 7 foot, and they're kind of playing that early 2000s period of style where it's big men up front and not this three-point shooting team, right? I mean, they're a terrible three-point shooting team. Sans game one. I think they shot over 30. But, I mean, they shoot under 30% from the three-point line in a modern era where teams are averaging 38 to 42%. So they're a terrible three-point shooting team, but they're scoring in the paint and they're dominating that way. And they're kind of showing that the big man can succeed again, quite frankly. So I've been happy to see that because I think too often we've been seeing these teams like the Warriors, and they're trying to play small ball and play the Warriors style. And you can't have 30 teams play that way. You have Klay Thompson, you have Steph Curry. I mean, that in itself was something. Then you have Kevin Durant, right? Not every team's going to have that. The Houston was the only other team that was similar, but everyone else just kind of tried to copy that. And I'm glad the Lakers decided, you know what? We're going to throw some big guys. And there was only one team that probably had a chance of playing them outright, and that was the Clips. And they choked, let's be honest. We can get into that later, but Marvin, what do you think about these Lakers and these Heat, or if you want to talk about the Lakers or the Heat specifically? What's been your take on this final so far?
Well, my takeaway from the beginning is just that the Heat are just simply outmatched. They're outmatched, outcoached on every level. I think when you look at the Heat and what they've done this year collectively as a team, it's something to be proud of. I mean, you got a young up and coming team. So they're the future. You got a Tyler Hero, you got Bam Adebayo, a Jimmy Butler, a guy that's a veteran who's been bouncing around from team to team and has finally found a home in Miami. I just love what they're doing down there. But that aside, it's like, thanks for coming, but they're in the way of the Lakers right now. And just like you said, Richie, the Lakers style of basketball has gone back to almost what it was in 2000s era when you had Shaq, you know, and that you got Shaq dominating the paint. Anthony Davis is doing the same thing, but Anthony Davis is something that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, besides Nikola Jokic, this guy is a skilled big man with guard skills. You're talking about a 6'11" guy that can shoot the three and that can put the ball on the floor, can cross dudes up. How many guys at 6'11" can do that? So if you ask me, Anthony Davis to walk away the finals MVP. I would not be shocked. I mean, like you said, Richie, LeBron putting up 39, 99. That's something we've all been used to, him being the guy and carrying teams on his back. But I'm glad to finally see that he's on a team with another sidekick again where he doesn't have to do that. And the Lakers, the thing, fellas, about the Lakers is that people thought they weren't even supposed to get to the finals, as if they didn't have a deep roster. That's not true. If you look at the Lakers from top to bottom, you got Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, Rondo. You got veterans, just veterans that have been in big moments before. So the Heat have the years ahead of them. Pat Riley has done a fantastic job. But, you know, all of you guys knew out there a sweep would be imminent. I mean, come on. I mean, who is stopping a 1-2 punch like that?
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I mean, and the Clippers could have had their say, but as all you know and we know on H2G Podcasts, they're at home like we all are right now. Nothing's given in this league. You know, you're not, guaranteed a spot for the championship. That's just how I feel. What about you, Tony?
Yeah, the finals really just resonated for me. The idea that the West is just so dominant over the East. I mean, that's really just all it proved to me. You know, Miami, what they did in the playoffs, sweeping, 4-1. I don't know all the stats, but it was pretty easy for the Heat to get through that. And then they get to the dance, and guess what? There's a giant there. And that giant is a 3-headed giant, because for the Lakers, they've got LeBron James, they've got Anthony Davis, they've got, for the third head, you could just place someone there. It doesn't even really matter, okay? Like you said, Marvin, Rondo, Dwight Howard. You've got, who's the guy that shoots the threes? Danny
Green.
Danny Green. So you've got anybody that you can place into that. For Miami, you got Jimmy Butler. You've got the one guy that Hero, which I love, by the way. If you've watched the finals, that's my biggest takeaway is this kid.
That kid.
Oh my God. This kid reminds me of like Ray Allen and Kyle Korver put together. Like he's popping things and he drives the ball. He's not just gonna just shoot the three. He'll also drive the ball. Listen, I wanted it to be competitive. I wanted it to be, go 6 games, maybe 5. But in reality, it's going to happen. You can bring out the brooms. They're going to get swept. I can't wait to see what happens with Kyrie and Brooklyn and KD to see maybe if there's some kind of power that they can instill a little bit in the East. But even with that, think about this. Even with that, unless there's some other free agency movements, the West is still going to dominate. You could pick 4 teams to win the NBA championship, and I guarantee 3 of those 4 teams will be a team in the West. And that's really all I have to say about it.
I agree with you on that. I absolutely agree. I think it's imbalanced, but I think in all fairness, a lot of the imbalance comes from the reality that a lot of these cities in the West Coast are larger and more appealing. Look, I mean, let's think of it this way. If Kawhi Leonard was on the Toronto Raptors, it wouldn't be this giant margin that it currently is. You take away a perennial top 3 player period and he leaves. Same thing if Giannis leaves, and let's not forget LeBron James. Same kind of concept, right? Now, again, it's LeBron James specifically, but the point is the East has lost LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard every year they're losing somebody. So that has a lot to do with it, in my opinion, too, is that the Eastern Conference teams don't have these large draw cities, realistically. And it's unfortunate, too, because Chicago's one of the biggest markets in the world. Nobody wants to play there. The Knicks are, New York City. Nobody wants to play for them because of the organization. You have the Nets, like Tony said, but you also have 2 basket heads, and we'll get to them a little later, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie. Then you have Miami. So other than Miami, Chicago, and New York, you have no large cities, and nobody wants to play in those large cities. Honestly, the only dude who wanted to play in Miami was that dog. And that's the thing about it is like Pat Riley has a different style, and their organization is very cutthroat, and you're going to play. And a lot of players don't want to deal with that. Jimmy Butler is a different type of cat, and that's why he's been successful there, because you looked at him in Minnesota and he had problems because he's saying the kids didn't want to play and he was sick of it. So he goes to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia looked like a powerhouse. You had Jimmy Buckets, you had Embiid, you had Ben Simmons, and then Jimmy was like, these cats don't want to play, screw this. And then he went to Miami. So everyone was thinking Jimmy was a basket head, but what he wanted was players who wanted to play. And you got Duncan Robinson, you got Hero, and you're seeing it, and you're seeing people who want to play. And now Jimmy's thriving. And it's also funny, too, because you look at Jimmy Butler, and he's a guy who's averaged over 20 points per game his career. And on this team, he ain't even leading his team in scoring half the time because of all these guys. They're offensive. They're definitely going to be a bright spot in the future, but their defense is lacking, and that could be a big concern. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Justin. I just wanted to kind of comment on that East versus West thing. Did you want to throw anything out there?
No, you're good. The only thing I had to say that wasn't said as far as the East versus West, it just reminds me of how I feel when, you guys know me and Tony both are Steelers fans, and we have our rebuilding years. And it sucks when those rebuilding years seem to go really well during the season for us, and we get that opportunity. And then who do we meet in the AFC Championship but the Patriots? Somebody who's established with veteran guys that our team just can't get over that hump. And sometimes that's how it is. But, then you come back and you get the ring. So that's a correlation that was made for me in my head. Honestly, the biggest takeaway I had from the season, aside from everything that you guys, your awesome points that you already made, was I just wanted to give some props for them for getting through it. I mean, 2020 is crazy. You played in the bubble, you finished the champion. I mean, yeah, it feels like one of those wins that's not as glorious as some of the rest. It might not be the focal point of a History Channel documentary or ESPN presents, but it probably will, because you guys played under some of the craziest circumstances that basketball has ever been performed under, and you did it on that high level, and you adapted and you got through it. So props.
Yeah, for sure. Some other side things I wanted to mention, some of the kind of weird statistics that I kind of found interesting. Alex Caruso, bald and dude on the Lakers, if you haven't noticed. Really young guy, he's like 27, but he's bald as it gets. He looks like my accountant. But Alex, one thing that I thought was really cool, 20 steals in this playoff. There's only 5 guys who did it in the playoffs, 20 total steals. He did it off the bench, the only one to do it off the bench. So props to Alex Caruso. He is the white Jordan of this era. And I'm just kidding. I would also say the Miami Heat.
That's what they call him.
Yeah. 3 white boys starting. I think this is a big deal. And in all seriousness, the last time this happened in a playoff with 3 white players starting was, I think, 1998 with the Utah Jazz. So Miami Heat got some vanilla over there, man. They got some talent, and they're pretty young, and who knows? We'll see how that goes. I'm very excited for that. I did want to get into the Brooklyn topic real quick, because I don't know if you fellas had heard this recently, but Kyrie Irving is saying that they don't have a head coach, right? Steve Nash is not the head coach. It's that it's going to be a collaborative effort. It could be Kyrie on some nights. It could be Kevin Durant, or maybe it'll be the head coach, Steve Nash. Marvin, you're shaking your head. Looks like in disgust. Why don't you lead us off with this?
I'm going to be careful what I say about Kyrie Irving, because Kyrie is a great player. He's a superstar in the league. I mean, he brought my Cleveland Cavaliers a championship in 2016, hitting that big shot in a Game 7. But don't get me wrong, when this is one of the most ignorant, stupidest things that he has ever said. And that's next to saying that the world is flat. And here's my reason for that.
Okay.
When you say you don't need a coach, can you name any of the superstars or the greats that have never been coached or said they never needed one? Michael Jackson in The Last Dance raved about how much they needed Phil Jackson, how much he kept that team together. Because without him, he said they wouldn't have not won as many championships as they have. So, my advice to Steve Nash is, like all the analysts have said, I hope you got some, ibuprofen somewhere near, some Advil, some kind of headache medicine, because when you got 2 ball dominant guards, because Kyrie's not the best player on the team, KD is. So KD is coming into a new situation in Brooklyn, y'all, where he came from a system where the ball was being moved around, Steph and Clay, He's not coming into that system now. He's moving into a system with a point guard that is used to having the ball and does not average over 5 assists a game. So that, for one, is why you would need a coach. That, for one, because the East is still bad. Like Tony said, the East is really bad. But one thing we've learned from this past postseason is chemistry and camaraderie. Teams that have been together, like the Nuggets, you saw them come down from a 3-1 deficit. Now, if Kyrie thinks that going into this season, you don't need to be coached, and you and KD haven't played together at all, no minutes at all, they haven't been on the floor, that they're just going to come in and just waltz their way to the finals, I don't think so. You know, you still got Giannis there. You still got a Boston Celtics team that is going to get better. They're going to add some pieces. So I just think, Richie, it's just ignorant. You know, Kyrie at this point, you're on your toes. He makes you walk on eggshells. If I'm the owner of the Nets, I'm the GM, I'm really taking a careful look at this year. I'm like, y'all got to show me something for all the money that we've been giving y'all, because when you say you don't need a coach, especially a Hall of Famer and Steve Nash, one of the greatest point guards to play the game, what's he there for? What is he there for? What'd you hire him for if you don't need a coach? Go ahead, Tony.
Listen, I'm not going to waste that much time because I really don't want to get too heated, but I don't like the comment that Kyrie had made about Steve Nash and the team and not needing a coach. And number two, I don't like the coaching hire myself specifically. I think they needed somebody that, you know, had a little bit more experience as a coach. As a player, great. I love Steve Nash. You know, great Canadian basketball player, played 18 years in the NBA. I don't 8-9 times All-Star. You know, his resume speaks for itself. But just because you have two superstars doesn't mean you can just insert anything here, coach, and see what happens. If you want to win, and you want to win now, especially in the league that we're in, it's very dominant on some very dominant players. You need somebody with some strategic mindset to be able to get you over the hump, because you need a coach. Michael Jordan had, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the first guy that had the fro. I can't even think of his name. And then he had Doug Collins. Those two coaches were scrub coaches. They didn't even do anything for Michael Jordan. Insert Phil Jackson, just like Marvin said, and guess what you had? A recipe that was successful. So, like I said, I can get into this a little bit more. I really don't want to. I don't want to take too much time away. We can see what Steve Nash does, but ultimately when it fails, guess who they're going to blame? It won't be Kyrie and it won't be Kevin Durant. It'll be Steve Nash. So guess what? You should have just skipped that the first time anyway.
Yeah, I think he's watching too many of his own YouTube videos, man. He's too caught up in Uncle
Drew.
Uncle Drew. Yeah, he's playing. He's wanting to play. He's trying to pretend like this is street basketball. This is the national basketball. So,
head has gotten so big.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, like you said, I can't take anything away from him. I think he's an awesome player. I loved the Uncle Drew stuff and the comedy behind all that. That was all great. But this is something you see from players in all sports. Great players with great talent, and they just make these questionable decisions that they forget. It's like they forget that the entire world's watching. And I don't think it's a recipe for success either. I mean, you don't have anybody driving the car. You've got the baddest car. You could have the baddest car on the market and all new wheels and a big ass engine. But if you don't have anybody driving, I mean, you're not going to win the race anyway. I know Teslas are existing, but they're not going to win a NASCAR race. You know what I mean? So
that's a great point.
Yeah, I think this was always a recipe for disaster. I don't think Steve Nash had a chance regardless of this, although hearing something like that really puts him in a bad position. I understand Tony's point of like, hey, Steve, like you need somebody more experienced. And all I'll say is this is clearly based on all these circumstances, this team, the Brooklyn Nets, are catering to Kevin Durant. Clearly Kyrie is also catering to Kevin Durant because he had said something on the same podcast where he said, basically this is the first dude that can take that shot. I don't have to take that shot. So most people perceive that as a shot at LeBron. We don't need to get into that debate. But the point is he's clearly saying Kevin, who's like one of his actual real life best friends, Kevin, we're best friends. But if you look at historically these players, they've never been leaders. They weren't like Kevin was not a leader on Oklahoma City. He was not a leader with the Bay Area Warriors as well. And you could see that, and there were rifts. And you look at Kyrie, and he said basically like, hey, I want to lead my own team. That's why I'm leaving Bron. And then he goes to Boston and says, I don't have to be the leader. We can be a leader by committee. And now he's on the Nets, and he's basically saying essentially the same kind of thing, so to speak. Well, I'm not here to be a leader. So you have two very sensitive players who don't take criticism well. And the only thing, and I say this in all seriousness, the only thing they're really good at is scoring. They're both really good at scoring. Neither are facilitators. Now, if they get to the NBA Finals and the playoffs, which they can in a weaker East conference like we talked about, it's anybody's game. If those dudes go off, it's just like 16 all over again. They could each score 40. They get 80 points. They could beat any team. They can. But how are they going to get there with how their sensitivity can be? They might clash with each other. Look at what's going to happen with Steve Nash. They're in a bad spot. And to counter the who needs a head coach, like everyone's been saying that same rhetoric, good example, Doc Rivers got canned. Quite frankly, deserved to get canned. Anyone who thinks otherwise is crazy. Here's an example. Montrezl Harrell was playing horrible against Joker. Could not do anything against Jokic. Honestly, Zubac was doing okay, and he played Harrell way too much. He let Harrell on the court way too long. Zubac was actually kind of holding Jokic a little better. Never made adjustments. Kept the exact same lineup. And yes, they were ahead by the third quarter every single time. But the point is why would you not play when you have analytics and you have data guys and they're being paid? And when the data shows you Zubac is doing Joker scoring less on him, you play Zubac. You don't worry about egos, right? You don't worry about egos. It doesn't matter. You're trying to win a fucking game. It's not about like appeasing your players. And that's what the flack that Doc Rivers gets is he's a coach's player, and he's not a coach in that sense. He caters to his players, and his players love him. But he hasn't won, and he's only won one time. And why is that? In my opinion, it's because of that. It's because he focuses on what his players feel and not being that hard ass. I'm the coach. This is the lineup we need to win. Deal with it. And he won't do that. And now he's going to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, quite frankly, I love Doc. You deserve an opportunity to work again. He got hired in 24 hours. But sorry, Philadelphia. It's Doc Rivers. He's the great coach of close to being enough, but not enough. And you're already a team that's close to being enough, but not enough. So Philadelphia, you're going to be probably 3 or 4 seed, and you're not going to get anywhere with that coach. But that's exactly why I feel the Nets needed a strong personality that was going to get those two in line, and that's the only way they're going to be successful. Steve Nash, I don't know the man. Who's to say? Maybe he's got that strong personality, but I think the hire had a lot to do with Kevin Durant's personal relationship with him when he was a Warriors coach, and I think that's why they hired him. Could be wrong. But it's also going to be like, who's the coaches out there you're going to hire that's going to go with the Nets? I mean, like, people keep throwing Mark Jackson out there, and I'm sorry, guys. Mark Jackson should never coach again. I say that in all seriousness. He did a great job with the Warriors. I don't think Steve Kerr's done that much with them, but that dude was like, people would get hurt and he'd be throwing Jesus water on him and praying and hoping to God it would heal. Like, he was literally that crazy. He would do prayer circles. I'm not kidding. These things are, you can look at this stuff up. He is way too serious about his religious beliefs, and he pushed it on the players. And that's just a mentality you can't have in a modern day NBA. Maybe 30 years ago when everyone was Christian, sure. But you can't be forcing players to pray. That's absurd. The dude will never get another job again. He's a totally fine commentator. I don't know who would coach the Nets and who's that like strong thing except Pat Riley. But I don't think they could handle a guy like Pat Riley and Spoelstra in the Heat. I don't think many people can take a guy who's going to tell you what you're going to do, because nowadays the players have the control and it's not the organizations, and players are going to stay away from that. So realistically, I'm with you guys on the whole East situation. I think it's weaker, but I think it's because the organizations that are the big markets like New York, both of them, Brooklyn and New York Knicks, and Chicago have terrible organizations. They're the biggest markets in the United States, and nobody wants to play for them. You know, you can't hold anything against Cleveland. You can't hold anything against Charlotte. They're small markets. Big guys are not going to stay there. Giannis Antetokounmpo is not going to stay in Milwaukee. Let's be honest. He'll move out of there. Now, hopefully, he'll join a bigger market and stay in the East. Otherwise, what we're going to see is the 1 through 8, like Tony was saying, on the West is all we're going to care about. And quite frankly, a couple years ago, that's what it was. It was literally Cleveland Cavaliers or one of these 7 Western teams are going to win. And that's all it was. And right now, we're in a weird situation where that could happen again. And I'm curious to see what the Clippers are going to do, by the way. We got a situation where they traded 7 draft picks for Paul George. George and Kawhi, what were they? 6 points in that last fourth quarter? And 0 by Kawhi Leonard, by the way. And they might leave next year. You fired Doc Rivers. Allegedly, Kawhi wanted Doc. And clearly, he didn't want him that much if you let him get fired. So they got 1 year left to make that team work. And, Montrezl Harrell clearly doesn't like Paul George. There's a lot of beef going on there. It's going to be a crazy season in the NBA. So are there any other thoughts, boys, before we move into the NFL? We good? You got anything, Marv?
Good.
Nope, I think you hit everything, Richie.
Actually, one thing, and then we'll go to the commercial break and come back on the NFL. I wanted to say to Kyrie Irving, Steve Nash, and who else did we mention from that team?
Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant. If you would like to defend yourselves, hit us up, H2Gpodcast.com. Go to the contact tab. We would love to have you come on and hear your side of the story. But these are our opinions. This is how we see it. You're watching The Wire. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of the mundane one subject, one point of view podcast? Have you been searching for a show that combines comedy, games, current events, and hot new up-and-coming artists? Well, look no further. The H2G Podcast has everything you need to start your week out right. So what are you waiting for? Stream previous seasons now at H2GPodcast.com. The H2G Podcast, Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Available at all social media platforms near you.
And we are back on The Wire, folks. Now we're talking about the NFL. I'm going to kick it to Tony because we're going to talk about the standings and then we're going to get into some opinions here. So, Tony, can you give us a brief rundown on who's the top fish at the pond?
All right, so I have it broken down by division, guys. So we're going to do the NFC West. We've got the Seahawks that are 4-0, the LA Rams at 3-1, the San Francisco 49ers at 2-1, and Arizona Cardinals at 2-2. NFC South, we have the Tampa Bay Bucks 3-1, Panthers 2-2, the Saints 2-2, and the Falcons 0-3. The NFC East, we have Dallas Cowboys at 1-3, which they're leading the division.
Leading the division. Washington football team 1-3. They're tied for the division. Philadelphia Eagles 0-2. The Giants 0-4. We've got the NFC North. Chicago Bears 3-0. Green Bay Packers 3-0. Minnesota Vikings 1-3. Detroit Lions 1-3. On to the AFC side, the AFC South, we've got the Titans at 3-0, the Colts at 2-1, the Jags at 1-3, the Texans at 0-4. We've got the AFC East, Buffalo Bills at 3-0, the New England Patriots at 2-1, the Dolphins at 1-3, and the Jets at 0-4. The AFC West, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at 3-0, the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-1, the Broncos at 1-3, the Chargers at 1-3, and finally the AFC North. You got the Pittsburgh Steelers at 3-0, the Cleveland Browns at 3-1, the Baltimore Ravens at 3-1, and the Cincinnati Bengals at 1-2-1.
Here we go. Steelers. Here we go.
Well, let's start off with what I would say is who are your early picks for the AFC and the NFC for the Super Bowl? So here we go, Justin. What do you say?
Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl.
Okay. What about the NFC?
I don't care. It doesn't matter. No, I'm just. I don't know. Yeah. I would have to say it doesn't matter because Pittsburgh's going to win. That's what I'd have to say.
You've got the Chicago Bears and the Packers at 3-0.
At the 3-0, yeah.
You got the
I was watching the Bears do work over here.
Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers. Got a
The
lot
Bears
of good
aren't.
teams in the NFC.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Let's go with the Seahawks.
Good choice. Tony, how about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the Seahawks. Russell Wilson is playing amazing football right now.
Yes, he
Probably
is.
early MVP. And then for the AFC side, until otherwise, I have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs just because they are just killing it. Pittsburgh, hopefully they can come out and show me what I need to see. But until I see them take out Kansas City or even New England, even though Tom Brady's not there, that coach is still there. And that coach, by me saying that coach, Bill Belichick, has always had Mike Tomlin's number. So we have to get past the Patriots. And by we, I mean the Steelers and also the Kansas City Chiefs for me to be really in on it. But I'm always going to root for the Steelers. But reality, Kansas City Chiefs, the team to beat.
Oh, you know me and my blind following. I'll always. This has been going on since when?
Since you're a wee little lad. Marv, what about you?
Well, this hasn't been too tough because I think the Chiefs are turning into a well-oiled machine week in and week out. Ever since we've seen Pat Mahomes win the Super Bowl and then get that extension and then extending Andy Reid and then adding Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the Travis Kelce, an improved defense. I mean, you're talking about a team that is very tough to beat, on any weekly basis. And in an AFC championship game, I mean, I say a team that could really challenge them in the AFC with a good defense. I'm going to have to go with you on this one, Justo. I can't believe I'm saying this. Tony.
Here we go.
Say the Steelers. The Steelers have a very, very solid defense this year. And I think that if the Chiefs go up against a defensive front and secondary like the Steelers, I think it might pose some problems for Pat Mahomes. I mean, as long as you can contain them, that's the thing. So, but I honestly don't think there's no containing Pat Mahomes right now. So it would have to take more of a concerted effort from the Steelers and the Ravens or the Browns in that division to really challenge them because they seem like those three teams I just named off are really hot right now. In the NFC, Richie, I would say no one's playing better football than the Seahawks right now. Y'all thought I was going to say the Falcons for a second. Any team that's not the Falcons that gives up 28 points on a weekly basis, every comeback you could think of, nope, it won't be them. Nobody's playing better than Russell Wilson right now. I mean, this guy is throwing touchdowns to anybody and everybody. He's throwing the touchdowns to me and you. I mean, this guy is spreading the ball around. They have weapons. They have so many weapons. And even on defense, they're solid. So I'd say a bold prediction. I'd have to say Chiefs Seahawks in the Super Bowl.
Okay. Marv, that's pretty close to what I would also say. I think for me, what we talked about earlier with the NBA, I want to transition to the NFL. I firmly believe in this year and these last couple of years, the NFC is like the West Coast. Like, I don't think there's more solid teams in the NFC than the AFC. You have like really stark teams in the AFC. Like you have, the history of the Patriots, but let's not kid ourselves. Last year, they were not, they didn't have a chance. I mean, come on, Tennessee was like running over them. But what you did have was the Baltimore Ravens, who really underperformed. And then you had the Kansas City Chiefs. But then if you look at the NFC, you had everybody, Green Bay, Seattle, the 49ers snuck up on people, etc. Right? Like right now, you don't ever forget the Saints. Like they're every year somehow, those guys are still like balling. Drew Brees is still balling. You know what I mean? So I definitely think for me, I'm not looking at the AFC because you guys already said everything there is to say. To me, the champion, just like Marv, when you're the champion and you come out hot, you got to have respect. And to me, until I see Kansas City have a weakness, Kansas City's the favorite. Patrick Mahomes, boy, I've already said head and shoulders deserve that $50 million contract. I know Tony don't like that. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger should be number 2. I personally think Russell Wilson should be number 2 by a landslide because Russell is balling even more than Mahomes boy at the end of the day. But what you got is you got the Seahawks. You got Tampa Bay technically. I still think they're kind of fraudulent. We'll see. I mean, yes, they have TB12, but they got a lot of great players right now on offense. My question is, can their defense sustain it? If they run into the Saints, can they keep up with the Saints on offense? I don't know. They're doing okay right now, but that remains to be seen. They're in a weak division, but that's what you're going to see. The Saints and the Bucks, and they're going to be jamming against each other. But the NFC West is what I'm looking forward to, man. You got the Seahawks, you got the Rams, you got the 49ers, and you even got the Cardinals. I think the equivalent in the AFC is the North, but Cleveland's fraudulent. They're 3-1, but they're fraudulent. It's really going to come down to Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And obviously, you guys love the Steelers. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about that division as is. I mean, you got 2 great teams that could potentially do it. And I'm not going to put Baltimore in any favors over the Steelers because at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson's incredible. But time in and time out, I watch them choke, being a 12-4 type team. So I want to see some more consistency from them. Pittsburgh doesn't usually have as much highs, but like they tend to win more, like in the big moments. So until like they're still like neck and neck to me there. But yeah, I mean, for sure, hand over fist. Seattle really got robbed earlier last year, and I really expect them. And I think that's why the 49ers squeezed in, although they're a great team. I expect to see a Seattle and Mahomes boy going for a back-to-back. Justin, did you have something? It looked like you wanted to talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna just slightly rescind my blind following. I am one of those fans that I'm just gonna root and have fun regardless. I'd love to watch the football and like around the board, but I will say that what I've got to watch this season, we talked earlier and back on the H2G podcast that I've got time this year to watch. Ben Roethlisberger, I will say, is starting to look a little bit like the Ben I remember, know and love. And we were comparing with Mr. Mahomes. And so I just wanted to, off of Tony, kind of look at this. I mean, Ben's not so far behind with 777 yards so far at Pat's got 898. So, I mean, he's not, I know it's not the best, but I mean, he's not so far behind.
It's kind of a stretch, my friend.
Yeah.
Look at you. Let me sum this up real quick, okay?
I lose.
You're a fan. You're a diehard fan, and I give you that 100%. I'm going to give you a round of applause for being a diehard fan. I'm a diehard fan too. I'll ride and die, but I also have to know that Mahomes brings a different kind of athleticism that Ben Roethlisberger doesn't. Number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs have so many more weapons than the Steelers have. Okay, so they're fast. They're fast and they're young. The Steelers have defense, which the defense is good, but guess what? The first 3 games, I'm a little shaken. I'm a little scared because we haven't even faced a real quarterback besides Watson. We had a backup quarterback against the Broncos, and in that first week, we didn't even know what was going on. The fact that the offense was able to put up 3 touchdowns and the defense was able to hold it was good, but if we're rushing 7 and we're doing single coverage in the back, man-to-man on defense, I'm a little scared right now. That's where I sit right now. When we talk about the quarterbacks, Ben Roethlisberger is an elite quarterback that a lot of people miss out on because they don't see Ben and what he does all the time. The way he extends plays, but he also puts himself into danger. He's also putting his offensive line into danger because now the offensive line has to hold a little bit longer. Not hold, but block. You know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. So Ben is good, but Mahomes is a totally different breed.
It's a different kind of quarterback. I agree there. That's
the only thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, no. And I was just saying, I'm watching him make better decisions than I have. I literally have had to miss out on some seasons of the NFL because of my position. But when I get a chance to watch, it's always disappointing to see that Ben is not what I was so excited. I was there. That was the height of my, fandom, I guess, was watching him get the rings and come in off the bench and do what he did. And I saw him play at Miami. I saw him play a special game at Bowling Green for like my brother's Pee Wee Super Bowl thing. I've been a fan for a long time have been, and not a fan of some of the things that he's done. But I was just wanting to say that he looks better. He looks calculated. He looks like he's making good decisions. And I'm not saying that he's going to outthrow Mahomes, but he will stand there and take a beating from the best of the defenses in the league.
I know that Richie and Marvin need to be able to say something too, but this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to concede over. I told everybody, and I have a bet with my friend, and I told my dad, I said, watch, Roethlisberger is going to throw the least amount of interceptions he's ever thrown because he doesn't have to force the ball to somebody. And my dad kept saying, no, he's a bad decision maker, bad quarterback. I said, no, I'm telling you, he threw the ball to AB because AB wanted the ball. He wanted that relationship to work. So you throwing balls that you shouldn't even be throwing. You see him right now throwing the ball to 8 different people per game, and he's only got 1 interception in 3 weeks. We'll see how that trend continues, but that's the only difference that I see with Ben Roethlisberger this year versus previous years.
Yeah. What I'm going to say is I'm going to try not to go analytical with the whole Ben thing. I'll say this. I don't think he's ever been a dumb quarterback. I think in the last couple of years he's played carelessly. I think to what Tony pointed out is a lot have to do with it. I just think, and I hate to say this, but I got to be honest, in this modern era, I just don't like having a discussion about him as of now. Maybe when we get to the playoffs, it's worth it because that's when we'll get to see him again and have a handle. But you got Russell Wilson, you got Aaron Rodgers, you got Derek Carr, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Lamar Jackson. I mean, you have all these studs right now. And it's just like, and for his age, him and Aaron are remarkable for their age. Because those other guys are in their early fucking 20s, let's be honest.
Drew Brees.
You got 3 incredible relics that are still showing that they have it. And that's why I don't like what you kind of said about your dad is like, he's not dumb. If he was dumb, he wouldn't be playing at his age and still performing like he's able to perform. Ben's a great guy. I'm just saying to be second highest paid, it has to do with his history, not his quality. And that's all I'm getting at. That's all I'll ever get at. Is there so many dudes like Russell Wilson? I don't know how that boy doesn't have. He should be like 45 mil. I mean, right now, guys, 139 QBR, 139. He's 20 points higher than the next dude. That dude's a bad boy right now. You got Patrick Mahomes, a bad boy. I mean, there's so many dudes that are just incredible. And Ben's going to lead this team. As far as, I'll give you one last little Steelers thing. Ben's going to lead the team. He's a great quarterback. And at the end of the year, will be a top 10 quarterback. But through 3 weeks, I just don't think it's worth discussing him at the moment. But Marvin, feel free to chime in on the quarterback situation. And let's kind of lead into maybe who we've liked seeing in terms of players and who we haven't liked seeing this year.
Well, I mean, I love what I'm seeing out of Aaron Rodgers. That's just a side note. I love what I'm seeing out of him because a lot of people were saying Aaron Rodgers is kind of heading off a cliff here. You know, he's kind of getting towards that point of his career where you might have to start looking at some other alternatives. You might draft another quarterback, which they did. But when you look at the way he's playing, the kind of pace he's playing at, they are, what he said, they're flying under the radar. I don't think so. When you're a team that's been to the NFC Championship game the year before, and you're even better the next year, when I thought that they would take a step back, he's really surprised me with his play this year. I really thought Aaron Rodgers would take that step back, but he's still in that conversation. Not as good as Russell Wilson right now, not as good as Pat Mahomes right now, but if he's in that conversation, look out. That's still a guy that can take his team to the Super Bowl.
He's a bad boy, 0 interceptions.
He's a bad man. 0 interceptions. I mean, and then you got a great run game there.
Interceptions, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, guys playing as good as football as you can get. And one guy that's really shocked me this year is really kind of taking a step back to me. I don't know if you guys all feel this way or you all out there feel the same way too. I really think Lamar Jackson is taking a huge regressive step back. Now, I think that when you have such a breakout like he did last year, defenses and coaches were able to scheme up things for him this year. So that's what we've seen so far. I mean, you've seen him still able to make plays with his legs and all that, but he still doesn't have a go-to number one receiver. Yeah, he spreads the ball around, but that offense is really dependable on how far Lamar Jackson will take them. And that is not how you win in the postseason. I mean, we've seen this. I mean, we've seen this from Michael Vick. Michael Vick fell short with that kind of style of play. So I think that he's taken a huge step back this year. And I'm going to have to throw Drew Brees in there as well. I really think this is his last year. He's had a Hall of Fame career. You can't get any better than Drew Brees, you know, a consummate professional. I mean, we will miss him when he's gone. You know, that was a quarterback that you could throw his name up there with the greats. But I think that when you look at the landscape of the league today, I mean, you've got quarterbacks that are just so young with so much upside. I mean, the veteran quarterback, like you said, Justin, like Big Ben, yeah, he's great. But how many more years can he keep even a good level of play up? Can he stay above average? That's the thing, even with a defense, because when you get this old, when you get older as a quarterback, you start managing the game because you got a younger running back, younger core receivers that can help you out in a good defense if you're lucky. So I really think that's something to really kind of look at in the next weeks going forward is, can Lamar, Drew, can some of these guys turn it around, and can Russell and guys like Aaron Rodgers sustain this level of play? Because Russell Wilson's come out the gate hot. I've seen this before. I even know about this in fantasy football, y'all. He'll come out hot, but then he'll have weeks where he'll give you 8-9 points, and you're like, how? You're like, how? But this, to me, seems like a different Russell Wilson. And if you ask me, Richie, I mean, he looks like a clear-cut MVP favorite to me right now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see right now he's head and shoulders above the rest. And I think the best way to describe it is kind of what you just said. Whereas you have a young kid who's a stud in Jackson, and he doesn't really have anybody, like you said. But like, to me, I almost feel like that's how I felt about Russell Wilson's entire career. Like, he just never had that guy. But Russell was still, it didn't matter. He always made it work. And that's what I've been most disappointed in Jackson this year specifically, is they're clearly planning around him, and I want him to succeed. It's the same thing with Deshaun Watson. And we're going to get into that in a second. I've been disappointed in Deshaun Watson. Now, I know DeAndre was his dude, but that's one of my studs, actually. One of my surprise picks was, yes, they have Kyler Murray, but DeAndre Hopkins has been balling out in Arizona. And maybe they're not going to do so hot, but that was a great trade for them. He's been my pick of the year so far as like most improved player. Not because his statistics are better. I mean, they're the exact same. But the dude went to a completely different team, and he's still balling out. And one guy I really wanted to see was Juju Smith. I really thought I would have seen him blow up. I honestly was hoping for that. I'm not saying it's his fault, but he's just not hitting it like I was expecting. Because to me, not that Antonio AB is not great, but Juju was very similar in talent to me. I really felt that way. And for those of you who don't know, Juju's the Steelers wide receiver, and he's fantastic.
Just hasn't taken that step up.
I just haven't seen it from him yet. Now, it's only been 3 games. There's plenty of time for the kid. But I really expected he'd be in the top 5 already, like in terms of just these 3 weeks, and especially with Ben playing so well. And I haven't seen Juju. So one of my biggest disappointments has been Deshaun Watson and Juju, because I expected Juju to be like up here. I really thought he was going to be at least at like 300 or 270, almost 100 yards per game kind of performance. And we're not getting that out of him yet. Now, maybe it's the schemes. I'm on the West Coast. I don't get to watch them every game. So who am I to know? But what I can say is I just expected that 95 to 100 yard per game performance from him. And we're not getting that yet. So we'll see. Still early. I definitely have been disappointed with Deshaun Watson the most, though, because that's the dude, right? He's the guy. I understand they traded DeAndre, but just like I mentioned about Jackson, it's the same thing. You're expected as the quarterback to lead a team, and you're 0-4 now, man, and you are a leader, and you're a quality quarterback. You got to figure it out with the coach. They got to do something. So biggest disappointments are Watson and Juju. The only real holy cow I wasn't expecting that was DeAndre Hopkins. That dude is balling out of his mind, and that's kind of my highs and my lows for my teams. Pleasantly surprised with kid out of Cincinnati. I'm losing my train of thought. He's played remarkably. He's had 3 games of 300 yards consecutively with what I consider the worst offensive line in football. Dear Lord, I think he's been sacked like 20 times in 3 games. Like, poor kid. He's 21 years old. Like, that boy needs some help. Cincinnati's going nowhere, but what I really think they need to do is pull that kid out after like 8 games. You cannot have a David Carr career for him, and at this rate, that's what's going to happen. He's too good to be hurting him this young in his career. You need to bench him very shortly and sustain his career because he's remarkable, but he's not going to go anywhere if he has 112 sacks. I mean, I think that's what he's on pace for right now, is like 112 sacks in a season. Nobody can take that kind of beating. Like, that's just terrible. So, anyhow, that's my 2 cents on the NFL.
Yeah, I would agree with you on some of those picks. And actually, my stud is JB9, which is Joe Burrow, the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, you're welcome. He's doing a great job. And, you know, the standings might not seem favorable to the Bengals, but you got to look at, he's a young quarterback. He's doing some things that even regular quarterbacks aren't even doing right now. Drew Brees, he's playing better than Drew Brees. Matt Ryan, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray. So, I mean, all these different players, the statistic-wise, he's right up there with. But you all know it's not always about statistics. It's all about how the team plays together. And if you're getting sacked 15 times in 3 games, you know, you're just opening the floodgates on what could possibly happen. I am very disappointed with Juju Smith-Schuster. I am very disappointed with, and I know I'm a Steelers guy, but Minkah Fitzpatrick. So, you know, out of those players, those are the players to me that I thought would have stepped up a little bit, and they haven't. Thank God for T.J. Watt. Thank God for Bud Dupree. Thank God for Cam Hayward. But other than that, Minkah I had as Defensive Player of the Year, and that's probably just because that's the flavor of the Kool-Aid that I wanted to drink. But in reality, I didn't get that, so I have to be a man and say I'm a little disappointed with that. So those would be my stars and studs, and then my non-studs. But JB9, y'all better watch out. Y'all better watch out.
Trying to be a bad boy, man. I think that's gonna wrap it up though for this week, guys. We charged it up a lot. I was a little more NBA focused, but I mean we're at the tail end of it. But be ready for The Wire. It's going to be here weekly. We're going to be getting into more football. We'll probably get a little more specific. It was just first episode. Let's just get our basic thoughts, and I am looking forward to next week, guys. So stay tuned. You are listening to The Wire, and we will see you next week.
Are you tired of the mundane one subject, one point of view podcast? Have you been searching for a show that combines comedy, games, current events, and hot new up-and-coming artists? Well, look no further. The H2G Podcast has everything you need to start your week out right. So what are you waiting for? Stream previous seasons now at H2GPodcast.com. The H2G Podcast, Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Available at all social media platforms near you.